And his speech is titled, Life Experiences Define Who We Are. A little bit about Greg. I met Greg at an executive panel at ASQ, and he was very impressive. His background is he has a PhD in chemical engineering, a Master of Science in Chemical Engineering, and I think a Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering as well. Not only this, he's written and patented different recipes. It's just amazing. He also had an opportunity to play football, but not only play football, but he has 10 years of experience in coaching football, mostly at the collegiate level. So he brings a very interesting background. Currently, he's a vice president of manufacturing and corporate engineering at Snyder's-Lance. And his speech is on life experiences, define who we are. It's his Icebreaker, his first speech as a Toastmaster. Please welcome Greg Flickinger.
Welcome, Toastmasters and guests. I wanted to come up and talk to everyone around life experiences. Life experiences shape and develop who we are, and ultimately, they really begin to define who we become. And for me personally, as Bob mentioned, I had quite an experience in the sport of football. I spent 23 years of my life heavily engaged with and really dedicated to the sport. I spent 13 years as a player, spent another 10 years as a coach. And as I look back and reflect, football really created who I am and who I've become. In essence, football's given me everything. It's given me an opportunity to get an education. It's taught me the value of hard work, taught me how to work on teams in many different scenarios, helped me hone my leadership skills, especially as I became a coach and began to give back. And maybe most importantly, it taught me how to really understand and adapt and get myself through adversity. So football's given me a lot. And as I've completed my career and began to move on, I started off in the corporate world for a year, then ended up back in graduate school. Soon after getting back on my feet in grad school, I had the opportunity to give back. And that opportunity to give back really gave me the chance to coach and begin to develop others. So for me, giving back is one of the key items that I personally really cherish and one of the things that's important in my life. So let me take you back. Let me take you back to when I played, back in high school. I went to a small rural school and not the greatest athletic school, never had a player in football ever go off and play at the collegiate level, at least at the scholarship level. So I had potential. I performed well, started working my way up through, had a vision. Of course, we all have great visions of what we want to become. And obviously I wanted to play at the college level, but I wanted to play beyond. So again, I had potential. I worked hard. I tried to teach myself fundamentals. The one thing that was missing, though, is coaching. I never really had a knowledgeable coach that could develop my skills and fundamentals and prepare me for the future. But I had a good career. I started both ways my sophomore year, played a little bit of quarterback. Going into my junior year, I found at the very beginning of the season I fractured my L5 vertebrae, so I essentially missed that whole season and missed that critical component and time frame for development. After that, our school levy failed, so funding wasn't there. The school decided they weren't going to have any extracurriculars, and so here I was going into my senior year, had never really played, had no experience that colleges would really gravitate to, and I was faced with I had 1 year to get accomplished so I could get an opportunity. Well, long story short, I found a school in the area that was about 22 miles away. My mother and I went and met a family there. The next time I saw that family was multiple weeks later, and I moved in. In between time, they transferred my guardianship, and so what happened was I lived there during the week and I went home on the weekends. I had a great season, adapted to the new school, new environment, again, senior year. We went undefeated, we went to the playoffs. I performed well, but again, I never really had the coaching. That was the first time I had the opportunity to get coaching, and it was a small window of a couple of months. I was very fortunate that I had the opportunity then to be offered a scholarship to Ohio University, came in as a quarterback, Ended up there were 5 quarterbacks in my recruiting class. There were another 4 on the roster. So if you do the numbers, those numbers kind of stack up against you for one position. At the end of that first season, the coaching staff was fired. So the group that brought me in and knew who I was disappeared. The new staff came in. And as is often the case, they began to take quarterbacks and start to move them to other positions. Well, I was lucky that I continued to perform, again, really probably more hard work and effort than maybe developed skills. Came down to the spring game, I played poorly. The only other quarterback in my class played well. And so soon after the spring game, I was informed that I was moving to inside linebacker. Then that was in the fall. The next spring, moved outside linebacker. The next fall, tight end, and I ended up being a utility player. So I played enough to letter, but again, it wasn't the career that I had hoped for. I completed school, got off into industry, again, started to coach, and that was my opportunity to begin to give back. And for me, giving back is critical. So I was able to go, and all those things that football gave me, it gave me everything. It was my chance to go give back to others and return the favor for what football had given me. So during that time period, I had this kind of burning desire where, I felt as if I could have done more if I would have had that person in my life, that person who understood the core fundamentals that could have developed my potential, and I always felt there was a gap. And so I began to coach. I coached for 10 years, 4 at the high school level, 6 at the collegiate level. But as I started to coach high school, my second year I ended up at Champaign Centennial High School in Champaign, Illinois. And at that school I met Dustin Ward. Dustin was a sophomore, had a lot of potential, had a great arm, had a passion and a desire, but needed a lot of development if he was going to move on and succeed with his goals, which was to play at the next level. So Dustin had a good sophomore year. I began to work with him. He played junior varsity. Going into his junior year, I became the offensive coordinator, so now I was in charge of the offense and developing all the players and the skill sets, both in season and out of season. So Dustin and I and the other quarterbacks began to work on building their fundamentals. Going into Dustin's junior year, he was the better quarterback physically and fundamentally, but the senior who was returning started the previous year. We went undefeated, and he knew how to run the offense. What Dustin lacked was leadership. He couldn't run the offense. It was an offense where the quarterbacks had to make a lot of decisions on the field. They had to change the plays. They had to read the coverages and get all other 9 players, all of the 10 players functioning as they should. So Dustin lacked the opportunity, not because he didn't necessarily have the skill set, but because he didn't have the leadership skills. So he played very sparingly his junior year, played a little bit, but didn't really see the field much. Going into his senior year, I met him the day after the season and said, okay, we got to start now. We have 1 year from now to get you ready. Not just for the next season, but 1 year to get you ready for your opportunity for the future. So Dustin and I met 2 days a week, 5:30 in the morning in the school gym, and worked on fundamentals. Footwork, throwing, I'd film, we'd go critique the film, and we continue to work on building his skill sets as well as his knowledge of the game. And of course, he was still doing the lifting and everything else that the rest of the team was doing. As we moved into spring, we were able to get outside and throw the ball outside. As we moved into summer, we started to get together 3 days a week, sometimes an hour and a half, sometimes 2, sometimes 3 hours, and just drilled and drilled and drilled and worked on continuing to develop his fundamentals and his skills. As you move forward into the season, Dustin had a tremendous senior year. It was the best team, even today, in school history, undefeated, went to the state semifinals in the state of Illinois in the 5A division, which was the second largest school division. He was named Area Player of the Year. He was named All-State Honorable Mention and was one of 4 or 5 quarterbacks in the state of Illinois, the best 4 or 5 quarterbacks in the state. Had a number of opportunities to go on to different colleges, Big Ten schools, some others outside of the Big Ten. But growing up in Champaign, his dream, his vision was he wanted to go to the University of Illinois. He wanted to be the hometown kid that went to the local university. So fortunately, Dustin got the opportunity, got a full offer from Ron Turner at the time at Illinois. Went to Illinois as a quarterback. He was there for 5 years, redshirted his first year. He played in 20 games. I promised him, I said, the first time you start, wherever it is in the country, I'm going to be there. So at the time, we're living in Minneapolis. I got the call. He was going to start against Northwestern. So my wife and I hopped in the car, last minute, drove down to Evansville and got the opportunity to watch him start. And that first opportunity to start and play in the Big Ten. And for me, it was kind of the culmination of all this time, effort, and work, even going back to when I was young and didn't have those opportunities, and now finally I was able to help provide the opportunity for someone to achieve what I had hoped to achieve. Dustin had a decent career. He, as I said, started in 20 games, ended up at a point later in his career had to have shoulder surgery, and that really capped what he could do. He ended up graduating and had got his education, and again learned leadership, learned how to mentor, learned how to coach while he was, especially in the backup role, was teaching other kids. And now if you fast forward, it kind of comes full circle because Dustin is a college coach. He coached at DePaul University for a number of years. He's been at Concord University in West Virginia now for 3. He's an offensive coordinator, and now he's giving back in the same way that I gave to him. And so if you think about it, our life experiences really begin to shape who we are, and those experiences create us, but ultimately those experiences really define who we become. And for me, later in my life, I learned about the concept of servant leadership. And as I reflect back, I was giving and developing others. I didn't get paid. I got a small stipend, but it didn't even pay for gas. But I spent countless hours, got out of bed to get to the school. I had to leave at 4:30 in the morning to get to the school in time, to get to the gym at 5:30 to do workouts with Dustin, just because I wanted to make sure that Dustin would succeed and have opportunities that I didn't have. So again, as you reflect back to your experiences, and Tommy said, how do you inspire? How do you motivate others? How do those experiences translate to who you become? And for me, this was my opportunity to develop a skill that I really, really continue to work on today, which again is servant leadership. Thank you.